Let's start with number 10, Contrast, a game that a lot of people may have missed entirely, and that's a real shame. Contrast is a puzzle platformer developed by Compulsion Games, the studio that would later go on to make We Happy Few. It's set in a beautifully stylized 1920s noir-inspired world, and you play as Dawn, a mysterious figure who can shift between the three-dimensional environment and a two-dimensional shadow world projected on walls. That shadow mechanic is the heart of the entire experience, and it's genuinely creative. You manipulate light sources and objects to change the shadows, then slip into them to traverse platforms that only exist in silhouette. It's clever, it's atmospheric, and the story it wraps around this mechanic, a tale about a young girl and her troubled family, is surprisingly touching. Contrast is short, maybe 3 to 4 hours, and it does have a few rough edges. Some of the platforming can feel a bit floaty, and there are occasional minor bugs that remind you this was a smaller budget project. But here's the thing, it launched as a complete experience with no monetization hooks, no live service elements, just a focused, self-contained adventure. And that's enough to earn it a spot on this list. Number 9, Ryse, Son of Rome. Ryse, Son of Rome was a launch title for the Xbox One, developed by Crytek, and it remains one of the most visually striking games of its generation. You play as Marius Titus, a Roman centurion fighting his way through barbarian hordes and political betrayal in a story loosely inspired by Roman history and mythology. The combat is melee-focused, built around a rhythm of strikes, deflects, and brutal executions that are genuinely cinematic to watch and satisfying to pull off. Now, the common criticism of Ryse has always been that the combat gets repetitive over time, and that's fair. The enemy variety is limited, and if you're looking for deep mechanical complexity, this isn't the game for you. The campaign is also relatively short, at around 5 to 6 hours. But I think those criticisms miss what Ryse does well. It's a tightly paced, visually stunning action experience that doesn't pad itself out with unnecessary content. The set pieces are impressive, the production values are through the roof, and the spectacle of it all still holds up remarkably well even now. It launched as a complete product. You paid your money, you got a full game with a beginning, a middle, and an end. Just a focused, cinematic action game. And sometimes that's exactly what you want. Number 8, Bully. Bully is one of those games that could only have come from Rockstar, and it's the kind of game they probably wouldn't greenlight today. Set in the fictional Bulworth Academy, you play as Jimmy Hopkins, a troublemaking teenager dropped off at a boarding school full of cliques, bullies, corrupt authority figures, and absurd situations. It's essentially a smaller-scale open-world game built around navigating the social hierarchies of school life, and it's brilliant. The writing is sharp and funny without ever feeling mean-spirited. The characters are exaggerated but memorable, from the nerds to the jocks to the greasers, and the way you interact and manage these factions gives the game a surprising amount of depth. The classes you attend are actually enjoyable mini-games that reward you with useful abilities, which is a nice touch. And the world, while compact compared to something like Grand Theft Auto, feels dense and alive with things to do. Bully proves that you don't need a 100-hour runtime or a massive map to create an engaging open-world experience. It's also one of those games that fans have been begging for a sequel to for years, and honestly, I get it. There's nothing else quite like it. Number 7, Rise of the Tomb Raider. The second entry in the rebooted Tomb Raider trilogy, and in my opinion, the strongest of the three. Rise of the Tomb Raider strikes what I think is the ideal balance between combat, exploration, and puzzle solving. The 2013 reboot leaned heavily into action and survival, and Shadow of the Tomb Raider swung more towards stealth and tombs. Rise sits comfortably in the middle, and it's better for it. The optional challenge tombs are a real highlight here. They're more elaborate and more rewarding than what the 2013 game offered, and they actually feel like the kind of ancient, trap-laden spaces you'd expect Lara Croft to be exploring. The Siberian setting is gorgeous, the crafting and progression systems are satisfying without being overwhelming, and the pacing is well managed throughout the campaign. The story won't blow you away, but it's solid enough to keep you invested, and it gives Lara a personal motivation that ties into the broader adventure nicely. It's a polished, complete, well-paced action-adventure game that gives you a healthy amount of optional content without ever feeling bloated. The visuals have held up well across platforms, and the performance is stable. It's just a really well-made game, and that simplicity is part of its strength. Number 6. Battlefield Bad Company 2. For a lot of Battlefield fans, this is still the gold standard. Battlefield Bad Company 2 delivered something that the franchise has struggled to replicate ever since, a campaign with genuinely likable characters and a multiplayer experience that felt focused and purposeful. The single-player campaign featured a squad of misfit soldiers with real personality and humor. The banter between Haggard, Sweetwater, Sarge, and Marlowe gave the story a warmth and charm that most military shooters completely lack. It wasn't trying to be a gritty, self-serious war drama. It was having fun with the genre, and it worked. But the real star was the multiplayer. The destruction system was meaningful and impactful. You could level entire buildings, reshape sightlines, and fundamentally change how a map played over the course of a match. The rush mode was phenomenal, creating these intense, focused pushes that generated incredible moments organically. The gunplay had weight, the maps were well-designed, and the overall balance rewarded teamwork and smart play. Bad Company 2 understood what made Battlefield special in a way that several later entries in the series seem to have forgotten. Number 5. Sleeping Dogs. I will never stop talking about Sleeping Dogs because it is one of the most underrated open-world games ever made, and it deserves so much more recognition than it got. Developed by United Front Games and published by Square Enix, Sleeping Dogs puts you in the shoes of Wei Shen, an undercover cop infiltrating the Sun On Yi Triad organization in Hong Kong. The premise alone sets it apart from the usual open-world crime game, but it's the execution that really elevates it. The martial arts combat system is outstanding. It's fluid, brutal, and satisfying in a way that very few open-world action games have managed to match before or since. You can grab enemies and slam them into environmental hazards, chain together combos, and use a counter system that makes you feel like a genuine martial arts expert when it clicks. The driving is fun and responsive, the story is surprisingly compelling with real emotional stakes, and the Hong Kong setting gives the game a unique identity and atmosphere that you simply don't get from another American city backdrop. Are there rough edges? Sure. The shooting mechanics aren't as polished as the hand-to-hand combat, and there are occasional minor bugs that remind you this was a smaller budget project. But here's the thing, it launched as a complete experience with no monetization hooks, no live service elements, just a focused, self-contained adventure. And it's a tragedy that United Front Games closed down and we never got a proper sequel because this franchise had so much more to give. Number 4. Batman Arkham Knight, the final chapter in Rocksteady's Arkham trilogy, and while it had a famously rocky PC launch, the game itself is a remarkable achievement. Arkham Knight takes everything that worked in Asylum and City, the free-flow combat, the Predator stealth encounters, the detective work, the atmosphere, and refines it to its highest point. The combat in particular is the most polished version of the system, with a wider variety of enemy types, more gadget options, and a fluidity that makes every encounter feel dynamic and cinematic. Gotham City is stunning. The rain-soaked streets, the neon reflections, the sheer density of detail in every corner of the map. It's one of the best realized game worlds of its era, and it still holds up visually today. The story wraps up Bruce Wayne's journey in a way that feels meaningful and earned, and the side content, from tracking down serial killers to dismantling militia outposts, is genuinely engaging rather than feeling like checkbox busywork. Now, the Batmobile. It's the most divisive element of the game, and I understand both sides. The tank combat sections can feel overused, and some players felt they disrupted the flow of what should be a game about being Batman on foot and in the air. That's valid criticism. The PC launch was also a serious problem at the time, though it has been largely addressed through patches. But when Arkham Knight is firing on all cylinders, it's one of the best superhero games ever made.
It launched as a complete story-driven experience with a definitive ending. No games-as-a-service hooks, no indefinite content roadmap, just a studio delivering their vision and closing the book. Number 3. Uncharted 4: A Thief's End. Naughty Dog at the absolute peak of their craft. Uncharted 4 is a masterclass in cinematic action-adventure game design, and it sends Nathan Drake off with the kind of emotional, mature storytelling that most games only dream of achieving. The set pieces are jaw-dropping, the animation work is stunningly natural, the voice performances from Nolan North, Troy Baker, and the rest of the cast are phenomenal, and the story takes genuine risks by slowing down and letting quiet character moments breathe between the spectacle. The gameplay builds on the foundation of the previous entries with wider, more open environments that give you more freedom in how you approach encounters. The stealth is more viable, the verticality adds interesting traversal options, and the gunplay, while not the deepest in the genre, is satisfying and well integrated into the larger adventure. What makes Uncharted 4 special isn't just any single element, it's how everything comes together. The pacing, the writing, the technical polish, the art direction, it all works in concert to create an experience that feels carefully considered from start to finish. It's also worth noting that this game is a technical showcase that still looks genuinely impressive years after its release. Number 2. Battlefield 1. DICE did something genuinely brave with Battlefield 1. They took a franchise known for modern and near-future military settings and dropped it into World War I, a conflict that most major studios wouldn't touch because of how different it is from what mainstream shooter audiences expect. The atmosphere in Battlefield 1 is unmatched. The sound design alone is some of the best in any shooter ever made. Every explosion shakes your speakers, every bullet crack snaps past with terrifying clarity, and the distant rumble of artillery creates an overwhelming sense of chaos and scale that puts you right in the middle of something horrifying and awe-inspiring at the same time. The visuals complement this perfectly, with maps that range from muddy trenches to sweeping desert landscapes to dense forests shrouded in fog. The campaign is structured as a series of war stories, short vignettes that follow different characters across different fronts of the conflict. Several of these are genuinely moving, and the decision to tell smaller, personal stories rather than one big action hero narrative was the right call for this setting. The multiplayer was where most players spent their time, and rightfully so. The Operations mode delivered some of the most memorable moments I've ever had in an online shooter, creating these epic multi-map pushes that felt like actual large-scale battles. And number 1, Titanfall 2. If there is one game on this list that perfectly embodies what happens when a studio pours everything they have into making the best possible game with no compromises, it's Titanfall 2. Respawn Entertainment took everything they learned from the original Titanfall, addressed its biggest criticism by adding a full single-player campaign, and delivered one of the most complete packages in modern FPS history. Let's talk about that campaign first, because it is genuinely one of the best single-player experiences in the entire genre. It's inventive, it's constantly surprising, and it never repeats the same trick twice. Every level introduces a new mechanic or concept, plays with it in increasingly creative ways, and then moves on before it gets stale. There's one level in particular, and if you've played it, you know exactly which one I'm talking about, that is one of the most creative, mind-bending things I've ever experienced in a first-person shooter. On top of all that mechanical creativity, the story manages to build a surprisingly emotional bond between your pilot character and your Titan BT-7274. It has no right being as touching as it is, but it works. Then there's the multiplayer, which combines fast, fluid pilot movement, including wall running and double jumping, with massive Titan combat in a way that no other game has successfully replicated. The skill ceiling is high, the moment-to-moment gameplay is exhilarating, and the balance between pilot and Titan combat gives matches a natural rhythm that keeps them engaging from start to finish. And here's what truly earns Titanfall 2 the top spot on this list. In 2016, while other shooters were building monetization systems designed to extract as much money as possible from their players, Respawn just made a great game and supported it generously. The tragedy of Titanfall 2 is that it was released in a brutal window between Battlefield 1 and Call of Duty Infinity Warfare, and it didn't get the commercial success it deserved. But its reputation has only grown over time, and for good reason. This is what happens when a talented studio focuses purely on craft, on making something excellent from top to bottom, and trusts that the quality will speak for itself. Titanfall 2 is proof that it does. That's the list. If any of these games passed you by the first time around, I genuinely encourage you to go back and give them a chance. Most of them are available for very reasonable prices these days, and they hold up far better than you might expect. And if you've played them all and have your own favorites that you think belong on a list like this, I'd love to hear about them in the comments. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoy this kind of content, consider subscribing. I'll see you in the next one.